I want to say one of the most dirtiest words that's ever been used on Aboriginal people is that we have to assimilate. And we can't assimilate. And what I keep saying to people all the time, I can honestly say to you guys and people that might be watching or listening or whatever, is that I've never assimilated. Coming from that reserve, I've never assimilated, but I've adapted to the white man's way, to put it that way, sort of thing. And I think that where a lot of our people are saying, well, you need to be like us. Why can't you be like us? And one of the guys said to me one day, he said, why do Aboriginal people set up health, education, all these, welfare and housing and all that stuff? Why do you do all that? I said, well, I explained it to him that a lot of our people haven't been able to get the right services, have they? You know what I mean? So for many of our Aboriginal people, we've been pressurised down this track to assimilate, to be like. What I want to say to people, what I'm sort of on about even in this bus trip, is that we're saying to people, it's okay for you to be who you are, because that you're unique, but we have to be respected in that way. And then what we're asking non-Aboriginal people, can you cross over the fence? Can you come on this side of the fence and walk down there for a little while? Talk to Brooke, talk to Shirli, talk to other people about what are some of the real issues that we've been struggling with for years,
Something that struck me actually yesterday that you said, that actually I've been thinking about ever since you said it, which is that, Indigenous culture is not just one culture, it's like over 300 different cultures. And I think to myself, you know what? If we learn how to live with 300 different cultures the way the Indigenous people did before we arrived and stuffed everything up, we'd be better off.
Yeah,
mate, absolutely.
Right. Because there's a diversity, I think, within every culture. And I suppose, how do we learn that?
We learn that through sitting down and yarning with each other around a table.
That's where it happens.
Where we had 300 nations of people in this one land that we now call Australia, a time before we needed a word reconciliation. We talk about reconciliation between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples, but we're actually like 300 peoples in one. And you look at Aboriginal Christians and the way we work across boundaries all the time, and that's across church boundaries. We're the greatest example of ecumenism that there is. And there's so much the wider Australian church can learn from us, just about how we build relationship with one another, which comes through love. And, Uncle Vince talks about me getting fired up, and part of that is because there's just some really simple stuff that we can do. This stuff isn't rocket science. It's about loving one another, which for me is central to what Jesus told us to do. And, one of the simple steps the Salvation Army could take, and it relates to recognising our 300 nations. And if we recognise those 300 nations, it's about recognition with dignity. It's who we are, and, we also have to think about mob who are part of the stolen generations and their stories to be honoured as well, and remembered and grieved for and loved through that experience, which, is such a traumatic experience, and so many of us suffer trauma. But as we go into Australia One, and the reference group has been asking for it for at least 5 years, but with change of appointments, when new officers are appointed to a new region, that the name of the nation, the lands that they're going to be ministering on, is put in their brief and put on the change of appointments. So you're opening up the world, and that doesn't cost any money, but it helps to break down boundaries and brings more understanding. And
I think starting from even the beginning when they become cadets, compulsory as a part of their studies around the cultural competence of officers, or them becoming officers. And I think for us, similar. The Salvation Army has seen us. We've been around for a few years, but now we want to be heard. We look at self-determination. What does that look like within the Salvation Army context? Letting us lead our ministries, resourcing, supporting, and really giving us a sense of influence within the Salvation Army, I think is going to be critical. And, you know, they're things that don't take a lot of effort. It takes commitment. But they're just some basic stuff that the Salvation Army can do, like leading into Australia. But now's the time to do it. If we're ever going to make a change and make a statement about who we are as a Salvation Army, you know, our bread and butter is made from going to the marginalised. But yet we fail to look at the marginalisation of the First Nations people. And what we need to do as an army to be able to service them better, to minister to them better, to walk alongside them. Our people have the solutions. We definitely know what the issues are. We don't need to be told anything. We know what the issues are and we know what the solutions are. But we've got to be given that opportunity, I think, to be able to speak into it.
That's right. I always remember several years ago, more years ago than I probably care to confess, I had a conversation with a guy who was involved in setting up the Koori Court in Victoria. And I sort of was in the trial period and I sort of asked him how he was going with everything. And he said to me something that I've always thought about, and I'll be interested to see what you guys think, especially in the army context. He said, the number one problem we're having is that white people, like government, are very task orientated. We're like, what's the outcome? Whereas like the elders that we're working with were very much more journey orientated. You know, what's the process of the process of developing this? And I think for me, and I think for my understanding of the army, is that the army is very task orientated. You know, here's a mission, here's an outcome we're trying to achieve. We're trying to end homelessness, or we're trying to, you know, evangelise to a particular area. And I'm just wondering, how do we shift more towards that journey-orientated mission? Because I think not only would that be good for our Indigenous engagement, I feel like it would be good for all of our engagement.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I think that's a lesson that we could all learn in all areas of ministry. So, you know, impart some wisdom. How does it
Well, the thing is, like we've had all the government policies over the years, and none of those policies, and I've been involved and I've worked in it, and I've been with local Aboriginal organisations with it. And all this sort of stuff that I've seen, it's all written up there, and these policies that have been going on just in a different flavour. You get a different worker in, so we'll tickle that policy up a bit because it needs a little bit of something, you know. And at the end of the day, we look and we think, well, where's that? How does that impact on that Aboriginal community, or, you know, wherever it is? It has a negative impact. It's, you know what I mean? And so, why do we keep on going back? And I've been challenging government. I've been up to Canberra and I talked to them up there about it. Same thing as I was saying, why do we keep putting money into something, the same thing over and over, and you're not seeing anything happening? And like, I think the Aboriginal people right throughout Australia and all the different sections or wherever have so much to offer. And you know what I come to? I just think that all this sort of stuff, and I think you touch on it too, Shirli, is that it's all so simple, but it's so difficult. I think we're in a different position, and I don't think I'm over-optimistic, but I am quite optimistic about the change, because I see these guys coming up, I see things happening that wasn't around when I was around. And we are part of the possibilities and the hope that's going on, because we're starting to create it. We're creating it here on this journey, and all of us will go away, myself included, because you're teaching me something. You're helping me. You know, it's not all, oh gee, we've got to give these fellas all the Aboriginal stuff. You know, we got to feed them up well, you know, sort of thing, and all that. It's a shared thing. You hit it on the head. It's simple, isn't it? It's love, respect, accepting, and realising that Aboriginal people, we have so much to offer, not only the churches, but mainstream.
So, Shirli, are you optimistic about where we're going? Are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I think, like, in great respect to Uncle Vince, that he's shared with us, you know, that he does see a bit of momentum building up with where we are. But we could be doing a lot better, I think, and not just to rest on the laurels of us building that momentum, but we should be picking up speed and not just sort of going with the flow. But to do that, you need more people around you, you need more support around you. And I think it's how do we equip, say, you know, our cause just to see the need in front of them? Because I know for me and my salvation journey, someone came from the Salvation Army, wasn't a corps officer or anything, it was just a skinny little white fellow, you know, and he came into our home and he just listened, and he was able to provide something, you know, and when I went to thank him, and I said, look, thank you, you don't know what you've done. And he said, oh, don't thank me, thank God. And for me, that was my point in time where I said, well, whoever God is, you know, if he comes to people in their need, like our family is in, then I want to be a part of that. But yeah, I think self-determination in the context of the Salvation Army is giving us a voice, a reference group, and, you know, any workers we have is the way forward. And because it's got to be, you know, our dreams and our aspirations and what we see for our people versus someone else.
You've used the word self-determination a lot. Can you just sort of tell us what that looks like? What self-determination is and what it looks like for the Indigenous community?
Well, I think it's given us a place at the table. At every level of this new structure we have, we should have a place at that table. Because that's where it is. We all have different skills, but unless we're sitting at the table, we will not get fed or we'll be getting the crumbs. So I think in the first instance, and that's easy to do, I think the Salvation Army have committed to the gender equity about the women. We want to see a commitment to have an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representative at each level also. And that'll be the start of it. And from there, if we've got someone at each level, then things will happen.
And it's not just about segregating us and coming and consulting with us when it's about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. It's about having us involved in all those levels of the Salvation Army.
Because I think sometimes they forget we're Salvationists.
That's right, that's right.
You know, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ, but we're still in this box over here. You know, we're Salvationists, and, you know, we care about what happens with the Salvation Army. We want to see the Salvation Army blossom because we know it brings hope. And that's why we're a part of it.
And as Aboriginal peoples, we are change agents. You can't survive for over 65,000 years through colonisation without being able to adapt and be leaders of change. And so, you know, we've done that through business, through government, through churches, through community. And we want the Salvation Army to realise the wealth of knowledge they have with their Aboriginal Salvationists, and that will unlock doors for them, that, you know, we can be a part of it together. And it would mean a lot to me.
It's achievable.
And to see that in Uncle Vince's lifetime.
That'd be wonderful, you know. I just we have to get into a position where this is what we've been talking in the reference group and stuff, is that we have to be empowered, not just only in ourselves, but the empowerment comes of it. How do we then translate this in the changes across the countryside? And I know the Salvation Army, the way it's set up, I've been involved for a good number of years, so I've got a fair idea of what happens and what doesn't. But where we're missing out is if we just become a church organisation, I think we'll die away if we don't have some of that mainstream, that blood flow, if you like, from the Indigenous people. I've seen this with the Uniting Church, with the Congress, stuff in there. They've got, you know, they're allowing that sort of stuff. There's, you know, never free of problems when you're dealing with groups of people and all that stuff, but you work through that. And we can find ways, and I just think that the contribution from the Indigenous people within the Salvation Army is at a level where it can be just so really powerful in bringing about the change right across, and actually not only for the Aboriginal people, but for the church. Full stop,